Have you ever wondered where those billion-dollar business ideas actually come from? You know, the big ones? It's a huge question, right? Well, today, we're going to cut through all the myths and get right down to a real, practical method for finding and, this is the important part, validating an idea that people will genuinely want. So let's dive in.
I mean, we've all seen it in the movies, right? The classic eureka moment. An apple falls on someone's head and boom, a world-changing idea is born. It makes for a great story, for sure. But in the real world, waiting around for that lightning bolt of inspiration is, well, it's one of the worst ways to find a great business idea. Actually, the more you try to force it, the harder it gets.
Okay, but what if I told you the secret to a great idea isn't having an idea at all? Yeah, I know, that sounds completely backward, but bear with me. What if the real secret isn't about finding a brilliant idea, but about finding a really interesting problem? That one little shift in focus, it changes everything. It's the difference between just guessing what people might want and actually knowing what they desperately need. All right, so first things first, let's bust this idea myth wide open. That whole lightning in a bottle thing, it's a fantastic story, but it is almost never how game-changing businesses are actually born. The truth is, it's way more methodical, and honestly, it's something any of us can do. Let's take Uber, for example. Picture this. It's 2008. Two friends, Travis Kalanick and Garrett Camp, are in Paris. It's a snowy night, and they cannot find a taxi anywhere. They're just stuck. That was the problem. Their first thought wasn't, hey, let's build a multi-billion-dollar global ride-sharing empire. No way. It was a simple question born out of frustration. What if you could request a ride just by tapping your phone? See? Uber wasn't some random idea that popped into their heads. It was a direct solution to a very real, very annoying problem they were experiencing right then and there. And that right there is the absolute key. The most successful businesses, they're built on solutions. They don't start with some cool product that's searching for a customer. No, they start with a customer who has a real problem that needs solving. So your goal shouldn't be to find an idea. Your goal is to find a problem that's worth solving. Okay, so if the goal is to find problems, how in the world do you actually do that, in a systematic way? Well, it turns out there's a really powerful and totally repeatable process for exactly this kind of thing. This framework is called design thinking, and really, it's just a solutions-based approach to solving problems. The whole point is that it puts human needs right at the center of everything. So instead of starting with, say, a piece of technology or a business plan, you start with empathy. You start by deeply, deeply understanding the people you're trying to help. So here's how it breaks down. There are 5 stages. First, you start with empathize. That's all about getting to know your user. Then you define the specific problem you're going to solve for them. And notice it's only after those first 2 steps that you get to ideate, which is just a fancy word for brainstorming solutions. After that, you build a quick and dirty prototype, and finally, you test it with actual users to see what they think. The real magic here is that it's a loop. You test, you learn, you repeat, getting closer and closer to the right solution with every cycle. Now, this whole process really hinges on 2 different ways of thinking. First, when you're in that ideate stage, you're using what's called divergent thinking. Think of it like opening the floodgates. The goal is just quantity over quality. Get as many ideas out there as you can, no matter how wild. Don't judge anything. Then, you switch gears to convergent thinking. This is where you start to narrow things down, like a funnel, and decide which idea is actually the most promising. This back and forth gives you both that wide-open creativity and the focus you need to move forward. But, okay, how do you actually start? Like, what's the first step? Well, it often begins with creating a user persona. You can do exercises like a day in the life or empathy mapping to paint a really detailed picture. So, for example, let's invent Terry. He's a young professional. He's really environmentally conscious. By mapping out his entire day, the little frustrations he has with plastic bags at the grocery store, the bit of pride he feels when he cycles to work, we can start to see and really pinpoint his actual problems and pain points. And once you've zeroed in on a problem area for someone like Terry, say his desire to be more sustainable, you can frame it as a how might we question. This is such a simple but powerful trick. It takes a vague problem and turns it into a focused challenge. So something like, how might we help young adults proactively become more sustainable? See how that works? It's specific enough to guide your brainstorming, but it's still open enough to let those really creative, innovative solutions come through. Okay, so you've found a problem. You've brainstormed a solution. You're feeling good. Now comes what is maybe the most dangerous part of this whole journey, talking to other people about your idea. And here's why it's dangerous. Getting honest, actually useful feedback is an art form. Most people are just programmed to be nice. They don't want to hurt your feelings. This is exactly where this brilliant little book called The Mom Test comes into play. The whole idea is super simple. Your mom is probably going to lie to you about your business idea. Why? Because she loves you. But here's the kicker. Almost everyone else will lie to you too, just to be polite. So the mom test is basically a set of rules for asking questions in a way that gets past all that politeness and gets you to the cold, hard truth. So how do you pass the mom test? It's all about one major shift. You have to stop asking for opinions about the future and start asking for facts about the past. So a bad question, a question that fails the test, is something like, do you think my idea is good? Or would you buy this? All you're going to get is compliments and guesses. A good question is something like, tell me about the last time you had to deal with this problem. Or what are you doing to solve this right now? Questions like that uncover real behavior and real pain.
It really all boils down to 3 simple but super powerful rules. Rule number 1, talk about their life, their problems, their struggles, not your amazing idea. Rule 2, ask about specific, concrete things that happened in their past, not their opinions about your imaginary future. And rule number 3, which is honestly a great rule for life in general, is talk less and listen a lot more.
All right, this brings us to the final and maybe the most crucial piece of this whole puzzle. How do you actually know, like for sure, that you validated your idea? Well, I'll tell you one thing. It has absolutely nothing to do with how many people tell you, wow, that's a great idea. Real, true validation isn't a compliment. It's not praise. It's commitment. It's when someone gives you something tangible, something valuable. We're talking about their money, their time, or even their reputation. Compliments are what we call bad data. Commitment? That's the only data that really, truly matters. So, what does this commitment actually look like, especially in the early stages? Well, it could be someone pre-ordering your product or paying a deposit. It could be them signing up for a paid pilot program. Or it could be a commitment of their time, like scheduling a follow-up meeting. It could even be a commitment of their reputation, like if they offer to introduce you to a key decision maker at their company. All of these things have a real cost to the other person, and that's precisely why they are so valuable as signals. And just a word of caution here. You have to be really careful not to fool yourself with weak signals. Look, getting 100 people to sign up for your email waitlist, it feels amazing. I get it. But a lot of the time, that just means people are a little bit curious. It's a signal to keep going for sure, but it is not a guarantee that they're going to pull out their credit cards when it's time to pay. You've got to look for stronger proof. And that right there is really the ultimate takeaway. The truth, it's not found in compliments or polite nods. The truth shows up the exact moment you ask for a real commitment of time, of money, of effort. That is what true validation looks like. So the next time you have an idea, don't just ask people if they like it. Instead, find out if their problem is painful enough that they are willing to commit to your solution. That's how you'll know you're really onto something.